They've got Fournier and Walker. They basically got Boston's backcourt from last year, and as a Die Easy Knicks fan, I do not like this. What do you think about it?
Buckets on buckets on buckets is what they're trying to make sure they have for you when you go to the Garden and you take Quincy to a game. He don't want you to look up at the score, and Tom Thibodeau has a team playing so tough in the mud that Julius Randle has 25 or 30 points, and everybody else has 12 or less. Until DeRozan gets going in the fourth quarter. He's giving you some buckets, dog. Evan Fournier, buckets. He's an 18, 20-point scorer. Kemba Walker, buckets. Your Knicks, I'm telling you, they're going to be in the lower part of the Eastern Conference, Jacoby. Okay? They got to get some people that can score the ball. If you can't get height and physicality, you got to get scoring off the dribble. And that's what they seem to be investing in.
Well, Jalen, they've already invested in R.J. Barrett. They've already got Emmanuel Quickley. They've got Derrick Rose. They didn't need new faces in the backcourt. Why did they do this?
That means that, like KRS-One, they're not done. They're not done. They're not done. Like, it's so easy to see these moves initially when they happen and question why they're taking place.
That's
I remember people was doing this when Porzingis got traded. You remember that? When Porzingis got traded? People felt like, oh, it's doom and gloom in New York City. They'll never respond. Oh, my God, they lost a unicorn. And all of a sudden, that became Julius Randle. I'm not necessarily, again, expecting the Knicks to have the magical season next year that they had this year. They're not going to be as high in the rankings in the Eastern Conference next year as they was last year.
No.
So you might as well bring in Kemba and bring in Fournier, some players that's going to get you some buckets to go alongside the guys you mentioned.
Well, last year they were in the playoffs. This year they'll be in the play-in. But a team that the Knicks lost to in the play-in tournament just signed a key piece. John Collins agreed to a 5-year, $125 million deal with the Hawks. A lot of people saw him not staying with the Hawks. What do you think about this move?
That's our guy, friend of the show. Happy to see him get his paper. And again, the casual fan, right? You're going to look at this deal, Dennis Schroeder, Jared Allen. Like, there are a lot of guys that you're going to say, what? Like, hold on. These guys probably won't be all-stars. They are starters, clearly, and they have a lot of potential. How did they get this deal right now? It's because of the value they bring to their team. Like I've said about John Collins, you don't see many players in the league that can make 63s and it's going to have 60 dunks. That's unique in today's game. And alongside Trae Young, a terrific pick and roll guy, a great lob threat, more depth up front with Hunter and Capella and the young big bodies that they have. They re-signed Trae Young. I like what the Hawks are trying to do. And I put them a step ahead of your New York Knickerbockers with these moves. Oh, that's right. As a matter of fact, last year I had to remind everybody that they had a better record than the Knicks. So I understand why you probably feel some sort of way about the moves your Knicks made, but they'll be just fine, dog. They'll be just fine.
Well, the Eastern Conference has been completely remixed in my mind because I see the Knicks not hosting a game one of a playoff series.
Oh, no.
And you think about the Celtics, and you think about the Sixers, and you think about the Hawks, you think about the Knicks, you think about all of these teams, like they're no longer challenging the Bucks
Indiana
and the Nets. And another team that's completely revamped what they have done in the Eastern Conference, former team of yours, which is basically half the league, Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls, not only did they bring in Vucevic last year and then they got a new backcourt, they've got DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan has spent the last decade scoring 20 points a game, and now he is in Chicago. What do you think about the addition of DeRozan in addition to everything else that they have done this offseason?
Mid-range magician, professional scorer. They pay you to put that ball in the basket, boys and girls. DeMar DeRozan is a perfect example of that. Soon as you cut the lights on, soon as you put them uniforms on, you're going to look down at the stat sheet, 20 to 25. Yep. You can ring it up. I don't care where he playing. I don't care what summer league he playing in. I don't care what NBA team he playing in. And just so you know, now for me, there's become tiers in the Eastern Conference. You kind of alluded to it, right? So you got the Nets, the Bucks, and the Heat. But like teams like the Bulls and the Hawks, to me, are edging really close to squads like Philadelphia as it relates to that second tier. And so I like how they've remade their team, their roster, and their relevancy. You see what it's like, Chicago, to actually have a living, breathing general manager that's making moves and building your roster? Like, wow, they've remade their team so very fast. You got Lavine, right? He's gonna get you 25 points a game, a terrific athlete. You show up the backcourt with Lonzo Ball. I know how much you like Caruso as well. And so now on the perimeter, when you add DeMar DeRozan, I really like what they're doing. And they have Vucevic inside, who's proven to be a 2010 guy.
Caruso, Ball, Jacoby White, like this team is a team that will not be an easy out in the playoffs. And last year, they got Vucevic and didn't even make the playoffs. We'll see what happens next year at the end of the season. Jalen Rose, we know the big three with the 17 and the Heineken River Deck here in New York City. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Anthony Rose. There's been so many free agent signings and so many teams have remixed their rosters that this one almost got overlooked. But Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors signed a 4-year, $215 million
Good Lord,
deal.
That's a lot of money.
Jalen, we always say that happiness is a function of realistic expectations. What are realistic expectations for Steph and these Warriors next year?
How about this team being built through the draft? With Mark Jackson as their head coach, and I'm disappointed he's been whiteballed from the league since he saw them draft Steph and Clay and Draymond. And you know, coincidentally, what helped them build their dynasty, where they can eventually add people like KD, is that Steph had injuries earlier in his career.
Yep.
So based on being an MVP level player, he wasn't making that kind of money initially. And so now you fast forward, he's the only guy in the history of the league that signed two $200+ million deals. And so now you look at their squad, right? You get the Splash Brothers and Draymond back. You need one of your young players to become a star. Yes. Is it going to be Wiseman? Is it going to be Moody? Is it going to be Kuminga? And then you decide if you're going to keep that player along with a guy like Wiggins, for example, or you're going to move them for an established player. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play these next 4 years. And this year is going to be a proving ground to uplift each of those guys I mentioned value, so then they can decide how they're going to try to go for that next run.
I didn't look at the Warriors last year and say this team is Klay Thompson away from contending for the Western Conference Championship. However, you mentioned it. They've got Wiggins. They've got Wiseman. They've got young players. They've got a mix of assets that would be very desirable for another team that they could kind of cash in to pair with Thompson and Curry. But one thing that I know that you care about is Curry's definitely getting a statue. He's definitely getting a statue. Like, they might as well give him one while he's still playing in the game.
No doubt about it. And this is the beauty. A guy like Steph can not only turn himself into a great player, but the team reinvests in him and or vice versa. And now all of a sudden we see a terrific Hall of Fame career happening right in front of us. He was one of my top choices for MVP just this past season.
Well, Jalen, we talked about the Eastern Conference and we talk about the top teams in the Eastern Conference. The Heat have kind of reloaded to make a run. And also the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Bucks and the Nets, have also added a lot of key players that will be part of their rotation. So who do you have coming out of the Eastern Conference, the Nets or the Bucks?
The Nets today, based on the rosters as I see them, because they have KD, they have Kyrie, They have James Harden. Of course, you're going to need to build out your roster around those guys in order to create some depth and some defense and some rim protection. But if those three guys are healthy, they're my favorite. Now, we're not going to overlook the Bucks by any way, shape, or form because Giannis figured something out that I appreciate. Sometimes when you're a big guy or you can be dominant in the paint, there's a mental manipulation that happens between fans and media and even other players because James Harden was kind of teasing him about being a dunker, right? But then when you decide like Shaq, yeah, I'm going to keep dunking every single time and y'all can't stop it. That's what he did in the playoffs. And so if he keeps that mentality, oh man, the league is in trouble. He'll easily average 30. Easy.
We had a great 7-game series between these two teams last year, and something tells me that we might